right. Well, good morning and welcome to Recovery Rises. I'm so happy to be here. I wanted to just talk just a little bit about how this came about, and it came about very, very swiftly. I know many of you, but for those of you that I don't know, I'm Dr. Christine Keisinger. About less than 10 days ago, I was sitting in an Al-Anon meeting, and it occurred to me that I wasn't quite sure how much longer we were going to be able to sit together in meetings. And I started to get really concerned about that and wondered about the possibility of running meetings via Zoom in this format. I talked to a couple of people about it, and then Helen suggested Recovery Rises and came up with the name, and with full support and cooperation from the Recovery Bank, this is how we find ourselves here this morning. So what I've done for now is I've put together 8 weeks worth of content so that we can meet here every Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. As you know, again, I'll remind you that all of these are recorded. They'll be uploaded to Recovery Bank's YouTube channel, and you can feel free to review the video and or share it widely. My goal with Recovery Rises is to have this forum available to us, not only to help you to maintain and even strengthen your own recovery, but during this really difficult time to rise up in it, whatever that means for you, okay? So I want to begin by leaning into the Serenity Prayer. And what I'm going to invite you to do is to, if you feel comfortable, to just close your eyes. And I'm going to go through each line of the Serenity Prayer very slowly. And I'd like for you just to take a moment to contemplate each of the lines. And then just ask yourselves, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. What right now, today, can't I change? And so forth. And then we'll come into the content. Okay? All right, so just find yourself in a comfortable position. And if it feels good for you, feel free to close your eyes. As we lean into the Serenity Prayer, as I have been so many times per day, each day. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. God, grant me the courage to change the things I can. God, grant me the wisdom to know the difference. And whenever you're ready, open your eyes. I'm going to be using some slides today, so I just want to take a moment to set this up for us. Can you see these? If you would just raise your hand and let me know if you can see these. Okay, great. All right, so why Recovery Rises? Why now? Why not? As I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how I have fought for my own recovery and that it's been hard won. And it's something that as you do, it's something we continue to fight for every day. As such, it's to be cherished, honored, and protected. I don't know how that scribble came onto the slide. Can you see that? But we're just going to roll with it. Our recovery goes on, and I'm really curious about how during this really difficult, unpredictable, challenging, and anxious time, we can rise in our own recovery. Our recovery does not stop. As I think about my own recovery, I started thinking, again, within this 10-day period, about this idea that it's been feeling really shaky. Any kind of stress, overwhelm, anxiety tends to create a shakiness in my own recovery. And it's as if the foundation of my recovery is really vulnerable right now. And this led me to think about if recovery were a house that I've built, you've built your own recovery. If you had to choose 4 main pillars that constitute that recovery, that if they were compromised, if they were fractured, if they were in any way injured, made vulnerable, would your recovery come tumbling down? So when I think about what the foundation of my own recovery is, for me, it's these 4 things. And they may be different for you. And for me, it's these 4 things now. It may have been 4 different things, 4 different pillars 3 years ago. But for me, these are the absolute pillars of my own recovery, sustaining and deepening my relationship to the God of my understanding. A devotion to exceptional self-care, exceptional, not just ordinary self-care, but exceptional self-care. My commitment to continued growth through learning and education. And my commitment to regular connection in my community. And for me, that means my relationships to those who are in meetings that I frequent. All of these things in the midst of this pandemic have been shaken up a bit. I think that I'm not alone when I say that I've had moments where I question my faith. In the face of anxiety and worry and overwhelm, self-care can go on the back burner. My commitment to growth through education and learning can go on the back burner. And certainly my connection to others and my community has been compromised a bit. So I have to take extra care and really be aware of my commitments as I continue to navigate through this really difficult time, especially when we don't know what's going to happen. We're not only in uncharted territory, but we are in the midst of not just personal transition, relational transition, professional transition, but global transition. And a lot of times when we're in the midst of transition, we have some sort of vision of what it's all going to look like on the other side. And the way that this is different is that we don't necessarily have that vision. And so we might feel as if we're traversing a path that's very dark and that's very unknown. I want to go back to this idea that our recovery is fought for and hard won. And I want you to just spend a few moments thinking about when you decided that you were going to walk this path of recovery and how that decision was one in which, in many ways, you were making as a way of saving your own life. And I want to take just a moment and share a poem that's been really important for me. It's one that I return back to again and again every time I think about what in my life fell away, the people in my life that fell away the moment I decided to walk the path of recovery. And many of you might know this poem. It's called The Journey by Mary Oliver, but it might sound differently to you given what's happening at this time in our lives. So again, this is another meditative moment if you just want to sit back and take these words in. I'm going to read this poem really slowly. For some of you, it might be new, but just take it in and perhaps ask, what does this mean for me in terms of my own recovery? One day, you finally knew what you had to do, and you began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles, mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop because you knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. But it was already late enough, and it was a wild night, and the road was full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own. There was a new voice that you slowly recognized as your own. And it was this voice that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. Determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. And for so many of us, that life has been our own. So let these Tuesdays continue to nourish and nurture and strengthen and maintain and even help you to rise in your own recovery, because recovery goes on, it does not stop. So I'd like for you between now and next week, if you join us next week, to think about if you had to identify 4 things right now that are the pillars of your own recovery, what would they be? In other words, if these 4 qualities were at all compromised, or if they feel a little bit vulnerable, you start to feel that the house that you call your recovery is on shaky ground. And for many of us, really powerful foundations are the 12 steps. But if you just had to choose 4, what would they be? And we'll talk about those next week. So we're survivors. I love this image. I always love the image of the plant or the flower that's coming up through concrete. And you've probably seen this in real life. And I want you to ask yourself this question, because this is really evidence of what we call resilience. So when you have been taken to your knees in life, when you have been taken to your knees, what was it within you that got you up? Just like, what is it inside of that plant that has pushed it up and out of the concrete? That is the part of you that is resilient, and it is constituted by qualities that are very unique to who we are. You know, like, what is the nature of your own grit? What is the nature of your own fortitude? What is the nature of your own determination and your will that had you make the decision that you needed to do the only thing you could do? You needed to save the only life you could save, which was your own. We are survivors, and this is what we know how to do really well. So this graphic indicates what we know now to be the 5 elements of stress response. You probably know the three F's I call them, right? We know how to fight because so many of us came out of family systems, relational systems, life circumstances where we had to fight our way through to survive. Many of us know how to flee. We leave when we need to. We can run out of situations, we can run out of relationships, we can run out of our circumstances as a way of surviving. Many of us know how to freeze, how to shut down in the face of trauma, drama, stress, overwhelm, relational difficulties. There have been 2 more F's very recently added that constitute the stress response. One is known as fawn, and to fawn means that in this moment of needing to survive whatever it is, I'm going to tell you everything I think that you need to hear. I'm going to do everything that I need to do. In other words, I'm going to fawn all over you so that I can survive this situation. And the way that we know that we're fawning as stress response is when we leave the interaction, we can't believe that we had to put ourselves through that. Like, I can't believe I had to say that. I can't believe I had to do that. I can't believe I had to abandon myself in order to survive. And then Dan Siegel, who's a neurologist, talks about probably the most extreme manifestation of the stress response, which is to literally faint. We see this a lot in children. We see this in adults as well, but we see this in a lot in children. The only way that I can survive this situation is to faint. I have a coaching client that I'm working with right now. Her son is 2 years old, and he's doing this. He's fainting. When you place the fainting in the context of a very, very stressed family system, there's a lot of stress, a lot of uncertainty going on right now in their family system. His fainting makes perfect sense. So we know how to be resilient. And part of the resilience is the grit and the fortitude that got us to where we are right now in our recovery. So again, thinking about, this is an interesting question. When you think about those moments in your life where you were brought to your knees, what got you up? What is the nature of your own grit, determinism, your own will, your own strength? So I want to share with you a definition of resilience that's a little bit different than the way that we tend to think about resilience. Resiliency tends to be talked about as whatever it takes for you to just bounce back. But what we know about resiliency is that it's comprised of a set of capacities that each of us have that helps us to meet and to respond to challenges, stressors, traumas, tragedies very consciously, very swiftly, very adaptively and very effectively. So what's interesting about resilience is that we're all born with these capacities, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. So we have these capacities that allow us to step up and to meet stress and pressure and challenges, traumas and tragedies, and to respond to them as opposed to react to them. So we all have this capacity. But when we are stressed and overwhelmed, our capacities diminish. If you hear Stella in the background, Stella is my 100-pound Great Pyrenees. Because I'm here at home, she might be barking a little bit. She's also diabetic, and she has very, very high blood glucose numbers this morning, so she's not feeling well, which is why I'm here with her. I would have gone somewhere else to lead this session, but you may hear her in the background a little bit. So what's interesting about resilience is that it is very innate. It is hardwired within us. We are born resilient. When we say that infants are resilient, it's really true. However, whether or not it's nurtured in you is another story. In other words, who were your resiliency teachers? Many of us did not have or come from families where those individuals around us were really good resiliency teachers. And we had to learn to cultivate our own resilience much later on in life, and we might be learning it now. I always knew that resilience was innate and hardwired. It's what helps us to survive, but I really didn't know it until I saw my nephew last April when he was born and immediately taken in for open heart surgery. Immediately. Wasn't even able to be touched by my brother and sister-in-law. He was born and he was taken in for open heart surgery. What was interesting was watching how quickly the scar, which came from here all the way down the front of his chest on this little body, how quickly it healed. And to be able to see the body's own wisdom and its ability to heal, and the fortitude in that child taught me firsthand our capacity for resiliency. So you were born that way as well. Now, whether or not your resiliency was nurtured is a totally different story, right? Because it really depends on who was around you, who helped to raise you. Were there certain mentors and teachers and guides that helped you to be resilient? Or are you just beginning to cultivate what we call our resiliency musculature now? What's interesting about resiliency is that it lives in the part of the brain that is very malleable. So despite everything that we've been through, we can continue to grow it much like we would grow musculature in the gym. We take the body to the gym to grow and to strengthen and to tone musculature. Well, we can do the same of our resiliency if we practice. So really the heart of today's lesson is what are called the 5 C's of resilient coping. And when you know the 5 C's, you can stop and ask yourself periodically, which of the 5 C's are being compromised right now? Which of the 5 C's do I need to spend some time cultivating? Okay. But before we do that, I want to stop the slides. I want to come back to the screen, and I just want to check in with everyone. What I would love is to take a moment and to go back to, well, actually to just take a moment and to ask if anyone would like to share just something about what I've said over the course of the last 20 minutes or so that really resonated with you, really grabbed your attention. And you can unmute yourself to do that.
Hi, this is Jay. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Jay.
Hi. Yeah, faint. My memory of my childhood is weak, to say the least. And my brother, who's 2.5 years older than I was, would tell me that whenever nonsense would start, mom, dad would fight, whatever craziness was going on, you could find me under a table sleeping or just asleep. And of course, I don't remember it, but now it makes perfect sense to me why I don't have those memories and what I guess my body was doing for me at that point in time. And yeah, that hit me like an anvil. So yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. That is an incredible example of what Dan Siegel would call, it's like a form of fainting, and the brilliance and the wisdom of your own body and brain to take you out of the situation. For some of us, a manifestation of, sometimes when we think about fleeing, running away as a stress response, we didn't necessarily always run away, but some of you may have had the experience of almost leaving your body. Disassociation is a form of fleeing. So again, it's all of these ways that we left in order to protect ourselves. So being under the table and falling asleep was brilliant. Brilliant on your part. But it also indicates the level of stress that was present and what you were picking up on.
Thank you.
And that need to shut down. Thank you. Someone else?
Hi, everybody. It's Margie.
Hey, Margie.
Hi.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I think the thing that stuck out for me, Christine, was the poem, which for some reason I had never heard before, but it describes perfectly different times in my life. One that I could think of when I embarked upon this journey again, and I was blessed to do so. I had to leave behind people that had been in my life for 30 years. And I remember how painful that was. I mean, it was really painful. And I had a lot of backlash from out there in the world. And, but I felt like this stirring inside of me was pushing me forward beyond my feelings, even beyond what I was thinking. I was just moving in another direction. Of course, it worked out beautifully. And then another time that I could think of is when I was dealing with, people in my life in addiction that I had to make really tough choices with. And I got a lot of backlash in that instance as well, where people just didn't understand what I had to do or what I was doing. And, but there was a knowing inside of me. And of course I had to have support in that knowing. And I sought out that support, but I just knew inside of me what was necessary and what I had to do. And I always used to say, this is really painful, but I'm certain about what I'm doing, even though it's painful. So that's what jumped out on me. That poem was just beautiful. And I'm going to make a copy of that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Margie.
Thank you. There's two places in that poem that I think are particularly relevant to all of us. And that is, the decision of what I must do. And then that part of the poem where you hear the voices saying, mend my life, right? They're pulling at your ankles. I think she even says, pulling at my ankles. These people in my life who, if I leave, if I walk my path, the path of recovery, are literally pulling at my ankle saying, no, 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 mend my life. You know, I need you here, and I need you a certain way to keep my life intact. Which is why the journey forward can just feel like this storm, like the foundation of everything is just shaking, but you keep going and you keep going. And then you look up and finally you start to see the stars are there. The clouds have parted. The stars are there in that dark sky. And that voice, save your own life. Save your own life. This is not for the faint of heart. This way, recovery is not for the faint of heart. I woke up thinking about that poem, and I'm glad it came to my mind so that I could share it this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Kelly, and I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Kelly.
So I want to say that I really like how you put the pillars up there. I've been referring to what you're describing as, for the first time in my life, you know, that I have 4 solid walls around me. That's a huge deal for me. And one of them is the recovery bank. I consider that a solid wall, and the home that I live in here would be the second. And I meet one-on-one up with somebody up at Marworth is the third, and then of course the AA meetings. So I've been going from corner to corner on what I call these 4 solid walls, which in reference, you use the pillars. I like that a lot. Also, you know, I'm not from Pennsylvania. I know I've said this before. I am coming in from upstate New York, outside of Syracuse. I do have a family. I do have a husband that's 4 years sober, and 27-year-old daughter who's just having a really horrific time with addiction, and a very young, innocent son just started driving. But, you know, I'm here at the sober house, and I'm telling you what, I just had to take care of myself. I'm learning how to, what it's about, like about me. I don't know what that's about. I don't know how not to act as in like mom ways, or lessening the struggles that I see through children. That's all I know. That's all I've done. So it has been kind of really hard for me to kind of take a look at, you know, what's been crippling me because of how I've been trying to help them. Very good stuff though, you know, like being brought to my knees. I certainly have been. I don't speak that lightly. Very painful, seeing just very good things, like this is a time now to take a look at things that have not been beneficial to others. My intentions have been good, but however, it's just not been effective. But I too have been brought to my knees, and like my pride like has been hurt, and it's just good to see these things. Very painful though, but I wouldn't change where I am for nothing. And to go through these things, to see, you know, taking a look at like the anger and such. I don't want to live like that anymore. And I've taken off a couple times, you know, just the fleeing thing. Yeah, that's all I know. But I've come back quickly, which is a huge deal. I'm need to work on a lot of things. But I thank you so much. This really, I'm so glad that you have this on here this morning. And I just thank you. So everything you said is just absolutely making sense. I need to be more for me and not for any other people right now. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for that share. The going back to the image of those times when you were brought to, we've all been brought to our knees. We're all going to be brought to our knees again. In many ways, we're being brought to our knees globally. But you're all here. Like, what got you out of bed this morning at this early hour to be here? Just what got you up, and remembering the image of the flower coming up through the concrete, the plant coming up through the concrete. We've done that. You know, we do that. There's a lot of, but just really, really thinking about your own fortitude and how it expresses itself, because it expresses itself differently for all of us, which is why our recovery is to be so cherished and protected. And even when those things that we rely upon to sustain our recovery are taken from us or are compromised, like the ability to be in a meeting live with people, that we find ways to keep it going. So do you want to hear about the 5 C's of resilient coping? Okay. These are really helpful. I'm going to go back to the slides. So these are helpful both to know them and also as a way of kind of gauging where you are. So Dr. Laura Graham, who's probably one of the most well-known contemporary scholars of resiliency, identified these 5 C's. And what she says about them is that when you're sort of assessing your own capacity for resiliency, these would be the 5 things that would be present. And they're all going to make sense to you, but I think when we dive deep into them, you get a fuller sense of what they actually mean. So when I'm feeling really strong, when my resiliency musculature is strong, I'm a relatively calm person. And what that means is that in the face of a really difficult moment, in the face of a really difficult situation, I might be afraid, I might be somewhat triggered, but I know enough to know that going ballistic, exploding, freaking out, becoming reactive never has a good outcome. I might not like what's happening. It might be challenging me at every level of my being, but I know that responding to whatever it is always going to be the better pathway. Responsiveness is not something we are hardwired to do. We're not. As human beings, we are hardwired for quick reaction. For many of us that have lived in family systems, relational systems that were highly chaotic, unpredictable, dysfunctional, whatever word you want to use to describe it, we lived highly reactively. What we know about the brain is that when there's a lot going on that I feel like I just have to manage in order to survive, we develop tunnel vision. Tunnel vision helps us to move forward. The problem with tunnel vision is if we stay there, is we miss everything else that's around us, including really important signs as to what it is we need to do to move forward. So tunnel vision is really important when you are in a severe, true, real emergency. But it is not a place to live in all the time. Tunnel vision, survival mode, reactivity mode. When I am resilient, when my musculature is moderately strong, very strong, for the most part, I'm calm, meaning I wake up every morning and I know that there are a variety of stressors and challenges that are going to come into my realm. But I know that I have the tools necessary to meet those things, to meet up with them in a way that I can trust, that I'm not going to fall apart, go ballistic, explode on people. I really love the word meet versus manage. Like we talk about stress management. What does it mean to meet your stress? You know, again, to know every day that there's going to be certain challenges that are going to come into my orbit. So how am I going to step up to meet them? Calm also refers to what we call equanimity, which is equanimity of mind, is that the mind is fairly even, that you are fairly even tempered. Again, things might upset you. You might not like what's going on. But for the most part, you can sort of manage your circumstances with a sense of ease. So just think about that first C. You know, primarily, am I calm in the face of upheaval? Clarity. Clarity means that for the most part, most of the time, my mind is not emotionally or cognitively hijacked. So what we know about stress hormone, cortisol and adrenaline mostly, is that when we are in states of high stress, the brain is kind of marinating in those hormones. Think about the brain marinating in stress hormone. When the brain is marinating in stress hormone, I will find it difficult to make a decision. I will find it difficult to focus and concentrate. I like the decision part because I see this a lot in people who are in recovery, because the clarity is something that we have to work on all the time. This is the person who has to make a decision, and they know what they want to do, but they have to run it by at least 30 people before actually deciding. And part of the lack of clarity is I'm really cut off from the front part of my brain, which you want to think about the front part of your brain as your inner CEO. This is the chief executive officer of your life. Calm, logical, rational, makes good decisions, is emotionally balanced. But when I am full of the stress hormone, I can't get to that part of my brain that I need to help me to make a good decision. So lack of clarity can feel like I just can't make a decision. I've got to ask 60 people about what I should do, or I'm putting this decision off. It's been something I've been working on for 5 years. What am I going to do, right? The decision that never gets made. In really severe situations, lack of clarity looks like cognitive impairment. I can't find my car keys. I'm searching everywhere for my car keys. Where are my car keys? And they're actually in my front pocket. Or I can't find my sunglasses. Searching frantically for the sunglasses. Where are they? They're on my forehead, on the top of my head. Or I know you, I run into you, I see you quite a bit and I can't remember your name, and it feels like it's right here in the front file, but I can't access it. And many of us in the last 12 days may feel like our clarity has been really challenged, because what's happening in the world is inherently terrifying. When I'm really resilient, I feel really well connected, and I prioritize my connections, and I have an understanding that I need connection in order to function well. In fact, I need connection to feel like my life is really fulfilling. And if you're really resilient, you understand that connection might be the most important thing to your survival. A woman in the UK who's a hospice worker wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. She studied the deathbed narratives of people she was working with, who were able to talk about what they most regretted. And the first top regret of the dying is I didn't get to live the life I wanted to live. I lived the life that I thought was expected of me, or I was just too terrified to claim the life I wanted to live, which is a very sobering, chilling regret. And the second regret is I did not take the time to foster my relationships. And so here I am at the end of my life, and I understand that that's what really mattered most. My accomplishments, my money, the places I've traveled, experiences that I've had, none of that really matters now. What really matters is, did I love? Was I loved? Connections get really compromised when resilience is not strong or it's not being cultivated, because most of the time we will withdraw from our connections when we're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed. You might find yourself withdrawing. It's what I call the drift, and we see this a lot in families, and we see this a lot in romantic relationships. You know, there's been so much stress and overwhelm that's never been managed. And 15 years into our marriage, we're looking at each other thinking, who are we? What happened to us? Right? The drift, it's slow. It happens over time, but it often happens not because we're bad people or something even terrible happened between us, but because we didn't nurture the connection or prioritize the connection. This is why right now, in what we're going through right now, because it is inherently stressful, that we make an intentional effort to keep our connections strong. When I feel really resilient, I feel really competent. And what that means is I really, really trust in my abilities. I trust in my abilities to protect myself. I trust in my abilities to do my work well. I don't doubt decisions that I make. I feel I have a clear sense of what my expertise is, what I do really well, and I have no problem offering that to the world. That's competence. But man, when I'm stressed, I start worrying about these things. Like, does this really matter? Do I really matter? Do I really have anything to offer here? We actually begin to forget what we're really good at, and we stop sharing it. At this particular time, in the uncertainty of everything that's going on, this is when we need to dig deep and ask, what do I do really well? Because now's the time that I need to offer it to the world. And finally, courage. When I feel resilient, I feel courageous. And I'm not afraid to take risks. I'm not afraid to say what I most want and need. I'm not afraid to show up in the most authentic way possible. Courage gets really compromised, or we start to see it waning as we get older and as our stress mounts. I like to think about my 22-year-old self, and sometimes I wonder, where did she go? My 22-year-old self would jump off the side of the mountain and figure out what's going to happen when she gets to the bottom as she's coming down. You know, as I'm falling, I'm figuring it all out so that when I get to the bottom, I know what I'm going to do, and I know that I can do it. So if you ever have moments where you think back and think, wow, where is that part of me? Where did she go? Where did he go? Go to stress first and ask yourself, what's been going on in my life that's really depleted my resilience, that has me question my courage. So when I'm really strong in my resiliency, I feel calm, I feel clear, I feel connected, I feel competent, and I feel courageous. So I want to open it back up again before we come into the final part of our work together, and just ask, of the 5 C's, where do you feel really strong? Like if you had to just choose one, this is my absolute resiliency strength. And then what's kind of shaky right now? And I can put them back up if you want me to. That would help. You can unmute yourself if you want to talk. Liza?
Well, I was putting my hand up too to put them back up because it's early. But anyway, I really liked what you said about resiliency before, and I like these 5 C's in that context. You know, I would say right now, probably more than anything, I'm practicing calm, but it's because of those other 4 C's. Because I'm, mostly because I'm connected. I feel a great sense of calm because I'm connected. And I feel connected because I still get to go to work, and I work in a recovery place, so I'm kind of around it all day. You know, I'm not working in a crazy place like a grocery store or something. Mm-hmm. I would probably be losing it by now. And I did work in a grocery store for a while, but I'm glad I'm not right now. But and I really appreciate everything they do. But the calm that comes, and the connectedness. And I feel like I feel confident in that I can handle my life. I can handle my job when I go to work, and all of that other stuff. And it just gives me, and it helps decrease any anxiety I'm having. I guess I have like a vague, which I don't have all the time, a vague underlying unease right now. Not really anxiety, not fear. It's not, and it's a low level of it, but all of this other stuff, this resilience, this calm and this connectedness, help keep it down at a level, that's manageable. Mm-hmm. And the other thing about resilience, I would say, is that before you said it can be cultivated and it can be grown, and mine definitely has since I came into recovery. I had resilience before I came into recovery, but I saw how fragile it really was. It was not a really strong resilience. It was kind of, I don't know, it's like one of those plants that, you give it a 2-degree change in temperature and it collapses. Well, I'll tell you what, alcohol totally collapsed my resilience, including my physical resilience at the end. And, and today it's so much better. And, for me, it's definitely the connectedness. Yeah. I am much more resilient. I am not just getting through, I'm like growing through. I'm growing through, and I go through something that's bad. And I haven't had to go through any really bad situations in my recovery, but when I've had little kind of bad situations, I handle it so much differently, and and I'm so much more resilient, and I remain so much more open. That's all I've got.
Thank you. One of the things that your comment really points out is that the 5 C's, each of them, they're intricately connected. So chances are, if calm is your strength, it's supported by the other C's. If you have a compromise in one of the C's, you're going to see little compromises in the others. So they are very, very much connected. Thanks for that. Someone else?
Would you be able to put the 5 C's up again?
Sure.
Thank you.
Because I have them up, I can't see all of you, so just know that if you want to say something, just unmute yourself. Don't make me call on you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rose.
Hey,
Hi,
Rose.
Hi, Rose.
I understand what you're saying when these all are interconnected. Because when I'm not calm, I definitely don't have any clarity. Because I'm one of those people that if I get stressed out, I can't remember anything. I can't remember your name. I will look for my sunglasses when they're on my head. Like, I do all that stuff when I'm stressed out and not calm. And so I could see how it all trickles down. And my connection with people and my connection with my higher power, that really,
I think we just lost you. You froze. Did she freeze for you, or is everyone frozen?
She froze for me.
She froze. Okay. Yeah, Rose, you froze. I don't know if you can hear us.
Rose, you froze.
because I do have resilience, was raised in an environment where I just had to be resilient. And my parents were resilient. They still are. We've had a lot of trials and tribulations throughout our life. And when I was younger, I did a lot of the escaping, like in my mind. And then as I got older, I like physically would escape situations to not have to deal with things. So, I've learned how to not do that anymore. And I do feel like I have a lot of courage to stay put. And all these are very interconnected. So thank you for this.
Thanks, Rose.
You're welcome. Thank you. Let me just take a look at the time. I want to bring us to an end with another poem, which I think is really powerful and applicable not only to today's session, but to what's going on in the world right now. And I invite you again to experience it meditatively. Just make sure you're all muted, and then I'll unmute us at the end. This poem is called This Precious Human Birth by Mark Nepo. And if you want, you can just, again, sit back, close your eyes, and just take in the words. Can we be mindful of how rare it is to find ourselves in human form on Earth? This is really a beautiful view of life that offers us the chance to feel enormous appreciation for the fact that we are here as individual spirits filled with consciousness, drinking water and chopping wood. We recognize that of all of the endless species of plants and animals and minerals that make up the earth, a very small portion of life has the wakefulness of spirit that we call being human. That I can rise from some depth of awareness to express this to you, and that you can receive it from me, is part of our precious human birth. We are so blessed in this time, in this place, to be human beings, alive in rare ways that we often take for granted. And all of this is to say that this precious human birth is unrepeatable. It is unrepeatable. So what will you do today, knowing that you are one of the rarest forms of life to ever walk the earth? How will you carry yourself? What will you do with your hands, What will you ask? And of whom? Today you are precious and rare and awake. Let this usher you into grateful living, because this makes hesitation useless. Grateful and awake, ask, what do I need to know now? Say what you feel now, and love what you love now. So I hope that you enjoyed today's session. I'll be back next Tuesday, 7 a.m., and we'll continue along this journey. The first 4 sessions are organized around protecting our recovery, and then the second 4 weeks, rising in our recovery. Again, this is recorded and it will be uploaded to Recovery Bank's YouTube channel, so feel free to share it. Feel free, if you thought this was useful, to invite others next time. And again, I really appreciate you being here. If anyone has any closing remarks, again, please unmute yourself and we can spend the last few minutes, or if any of you have any questions about any of today's content.
Hello again, everybody. It's Jay, alcoholic.
Hi, Jay.
That poem kind of put a lot into perspective, and if I haven't learned anything over the last week and a half, perspective is certainly dawned on me. Not this last Friday, the Friday before. After handling 10,000 saws 10,000 times in my life, I cut off half a finger and sliced 3 others. And basically what I'm boiling down to is, half a finger is certainly less than a pandemic. I have been meditating a lot lately, and I guess I'll leave you with this thought. I've been preaching, and you can tell me what your thoughts are on it. Let's all kind of be, this comes back to the calm, if you will. Let's be easy on ourselves and let's be easy on others. We from birth have been programmed, if you will, in many ways, some more than others. Wake up, go to school, go home, wake up, go to work, go home. So we really, although we can understand the concept of what's going on, I don't think we really are programmed enough to be able to wrap our heads around it and understand that in 30 or 60 days, 1, 2, or 3% of what we know could be completely gone, changed, which could be a great thing or not. But it dawned on me that, stay calm. Just, I can't change any of that. All I can do is go and be good. That's all I can do. Spread as much good and as much positive energy as I possibly can. Be easy on myself and be easy on other people through this sort of a time when no one can really, really wrap their head around what's going on. We can understand it because we're reading and listening to the news and all the nonsense, but can we really grasp it? Anybody's thoughts on that would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, everybody.
I think there's a difference between fear and panic. This situation is inherently fearful. Like, that is a truth. This is scary. Panic grows out of fear that you've allowed to just completely go unleashed in the mind. And then that's when we find ourselves, wanting to, take a club to people who are grabbing toilet paper because you want 5 packages, right? Like, starting to act like primitive cave people, that reactivity survivalistic mode, which is not going to serve us well. And that's just an example. I mean, I think that our excessive toilet paper buying grows out of this part of the brain not working. If your executive, the CEO is not in the office, right? You're allowing the reptilian brain to take over. And so to acknowledge this is really scary, but I'm really going to stay I'm going to try to achieve that equanimity of mind as I move through my day in the face of this is really important. And however you get there, I find that I've been meditating for 3 minutes between activities as opposed to one longer meditation, which is what I usually do, because I know that that's what's helping me right now. So we all have different ways of really protecting and nurturing and strengthening the calm part of the 5 C's. Thank you for that. All right, so I hope to see you all next week. Did you enjoy that?
Yes, thank you, Christine.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, guys.
Thanks, guys, for putting this on. This was wonderful.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You too.
Bye.